This is a Fox News alert. Just 3 days before leaving office, President Obama has commuted the majority of former soldier Chelsea Manning's 35-year sentence for leaking Army documents. Her sentence, which was supposed to end in 2048, will now end on May 17th. So, Greg, I was taping the podcast, I'll tell you what, with Chris Starwalt about 20 minutes ago, and I looked up and saw the breaking news, and I thought, oh, Greg Gutfeld's going to have a lot to say about this.
Well, I'm not a fanning of Chelsea Manning, that's for sure. Why did this happen? Why did this happen? One, because when she was a he, leaked incredible information, lots of information about our embassies, about intel that had to do with how we were treating prisoners. He was a hero. Then he became a she, and then became a different kind of hero, a hero in the transgendered community and in the media, because that is something to be, that's admirable. That you know, this you put that together. You know, how can she lose?
Hero.
Yeah, and then you have this concern about her health, that her health is under threat in prison, but is the threat to her health because of herself? Because I think she's attempted to kill herself a number of times. So if you want to get pardoned, it does. I mean, if this were just an average guy that had leaked this stuff and just went to jail as an average guy and didn't go and have a sex change and become a sympathetic character, would that person be treated differently?
Suicides, right.
Yeah, I think the person would be treated differently than Chelsea Manning.
Well, actually, Megan, the producer, could you just tell me who tweeted that, and I will relay the information. WikiLeaks. So apparently 5 days ago, WikiLeaks tweeted that if President Obama were to take this action for Chelsea Manning, then Julian Assange would agree to extradition to the United States, where he has some new fans.
We should clarify. Did he, Assange, say that if it was commuted or pardoned?
I don't know. I just said
there's a distinction.
There's very much.
Right. So if you're pardoned,
a commutation just means you get out of jail.
Commutation means the guilty verdict stands on your record, and then the pardon says no, the guilty is removed. So that could be a little distinction that Assange could actually say, I'm not coming out of hiding.
Just out of curiosity, why would Assange come to
because Manning made Assange's career.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
Yeah, Manning delivered all of these documents to WikiLeaks. If it wasn't for Manning, you wouldn't have Assange.
Was he a man when he did the leaks?
Yes, he was. His name was Bradley Manning at the time. This actually is very interesting. It almost seems to negate the Democrats' frustration with Assange and WikiLeaks over the Russia stuff, because what do they like more? Did they prefer that Chelsea Manning get the pardon they've been asking for, or are they mad at WikiLeaks for the Russia hack?
That's a good point.
Yeah, we were covering this on O'Reilly pretty closely on Is It Legal, and I'm very surprised by this action. People actually thought that he would pardon Bo Bergdahl and take a pass on Chelsea Manning. And what's interesting is, yes, this was already, that's true, and that could still come, so we're waiting to see what else he's done. He's actually been quite active and historically probably one of the most prolific pardoners and someone putting a lot forward in terms of commutations of sentences. Chelsea Manning actually confessed to all of this at the court-martial. Said, listen, I wasn't quite myself at the time, I had a lot of issues, and therefore I acted based on that, and I was unable to make a good decision or understand essentially the quality of the decision-making. I don't buy that.
Can I ask you a legal question? Because they're telling me that what WikiLeaks tweeted 5 days ago was that if President Obama granted clemency, so that's not a pardon, that's not commutation. What do you know what the legal distinction is?
Well, maybe he's referring to it more in terms of a a different country in terms of the language. You can kind of parse words on it, because some people are saying, oh, was he pardoned? No, he was not, or she was not pardoned. This is just a commutation to be out in May. So they're going to have to negotiate that. But I mean, is it going to be enforceable? Is this some kind of contract in writing? I mean, he doesn't have to go through with it, Assange, and come over here. I mean, this is interesting. And if that is the motivation for why President Obama did it, and I agree with Greg, if the situation were reversed and this was somebody who did this, like a Snowden type, would President Obama do that? Or is it because he was sympathetic and to his constituency, the LGBTQ community, that he wanted to do something and show
conceivably it would have been an option, Greg, to transfer her. If you're concerned about her well-being, then conceivably you could transfer to a civilian female prison to carry out the sentence, because the feedback I got immediately from people in the military and the intel world was that this feels like a real kick in the face to them from President Obama on his way out.
Well, he, at the time he was a he, copied hundreds of thousands of incident logs and something like 250,000 diplomatic cables from American embassies, dossiers on intel. The bottom line, he put people at risk. And then when he became a she, he became a sympathetic person. And that made it different.
Let's be realistic about it. He was a low-level intelligence person.
So? So was Ed Snowden.
He wouldn't have, well, because Snowden had access to NSA documents. This guy had access to embassy, lists of people who go into embassies, a few other things. I'm not so sure it's as big an intelligence leak as we've been seeing recently, both coming from here and going
You don't remember
Russia.
the coverage of this when it happened?
Do I remember?
Initially?
It depends.
No,
what
it was a big deal.
I mean, yeah, this seems far more relevant and important. These leaked documents, as Greg points out, 250,000 cables, also describing what our military activities were in different parts of the world. You juxtapose that to Ed Snowden, who leaked the NSA activity, the unconstitutional search and seizure of all Americans, and it's different. It's a data mining of what people are talking about on the phone here versus where our military people are stationed, what they're doing, who they're talking
to. Including translators that were helping the United States, who then were targeted.
I missed most of the coverage of this. I was laid up, but
I think that was before that. I'm going to use that excuse.
I see that. That's good.
Let me ask you something you do know about, for sure, which is that President's office.
I do know about?
Yeah, because you were there and you'll remember this. The Mark Rich pardon.
I do.
On his way out the door when President Clinton decided to do the Mark Rich pardon. Anybody here, trivia, who was the pardon attorney at the Justice Department at the time that approved that? Eric Holder.
Eric Holder.
I don't remember. Yeah. But remember, I mean, that really stuck to President Clinton like a glue forever.
This is too. I'm not trying to apologize for Obama at all. I think this is one of the stranger pardons or whatever you want to call it. I don't understand why he wants to get in the middle of this when we're in the middle of a lot of discussions about intelligence leaks coming from the Soviet Union, having to do with the Trump presidency. There's a lot of going on now, and I'm not so sure I would use this as a time to do this. I mean, male or female.
The Soviet
You brought in the Trump.
The Soviet Union
somehow. But the thing is, clemency meaning basically leniency. So you can argue about this back and forth and say, but I mean, it's lenient if you're letting someone get out of prison. In
commutation.
Right.
She will get a hero's welcome.
But is this because President Obama is calling Julian Assange's bluff? Is that what we're basing this on? Which is really an inappropriate reason.
Last word to you.
The last word, the most egregious thing about President Clinton's pardoning of Mark Rich was that Denise Rich was a massive donor to the Clinton Foundation, to Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. This was a complete payback. Her husband made $1 billion selling oil to the Iranians. That guy should have been in jail for a long time. Certainly not allowed to do business here again, and he completely wiped it clean because of a handout.
Yeah, and I tell you, it was a very, very bad decision. But they had Holder, and they also had somebody in the White House, the chief of staff, who was also in favor of doing that, and it did stick to him. And I think this will stick to Obama for a while. But there's a lot of other pardons that will stick to him as well.
What about the crack dealers and the meth dealers?
In this recent
Well, by the way, that's another offensive part, because they're supposed to be not people with any violence associated in their convictions. And almost all of them have weapons, gun charges, along with the drug dealing, which is highly inappropriate.
Yeah, crack and methamphetamine is something that shouldn't happen. But the marijuana pardons, I thought, were
I mean, crack dealers destroyed communities. The only way that crack dealing ended was when the communities turned on them because they couldn't stop. Like, nobody could do anything. It was finally the communities had to shame these people out of their communities and get them out of there. And I understand that this is, we've had a huge decline in crime overall in the last 3 or 4 decades, and I think that leads us to a false sense of security. It's like, well, you know what? They're now 30, 40 years. They're 40 years old. what are they going to do? You know, they get him out now.
But those aren't proper criteria. You're right.
What signal do you send to anyone who's thinking about leaking state secrets, military secrets, when you know that this egregious, I mean, not just a couple of documents, like locations, names, hundreds of thousands of cables, diplomatic cables, and you get pardoned, or you get
your sentence is commuted. You get out of jail.
Yeah.
You get out of jail basically free. I mean, you'll...
Well, you won't.
There's a bigger question here, and I don't know if it's ever going to get answered, is why did Obama do this?
Well, hopefully we will get answered. We're going to stay on this story. I mean, sometimes
it's cool.
It's cool to take a transgender and take her out of the...
Yes, that is it. I mean, this is a romantic, heroic figure. Somebody who leaked documents.
Romantic, heroic figure?
Yes, who leaked documents, which is yes, a romantic, heroic figure for leaking documents that exposed American injustice worldwide, then has a sex change, has a victim identity status. Put that together, you got a hero.
So
it's like made-for-TV movie.
Or did he and does she check all the boxes that Obama is trying to leave in his legacy?
Well, we'll see tomorrow.
Yeah.
Anti-war.
A lot of them.
LGBT community, etc.
And he gets to bait Assange and say, here, call your bluff. You coming?
Okay, and we will probably get more information about this because tomorrow is President Obama's last press conference.
Yeah, and let's hope Assange does get back so we put him in jail for life. And if I was for capital punishment, I would do it.
All right, Bob's back. A programming note.